spread a little aloha around the world at Breakfast with Bob.
Thank you, Poncho Man. Welcome back, everybody, to Breakfast with Bob, our Not Quite Cone edition. My name is Bob Babbitt, and we are brought to you by Master Spas. As fuels go longer, Hoka Let's Fly, Form Smart Swim Goggles, DeBoer Wetsuits, Quintana Roo, Zoot, the original triathlon brand, Premium Plus Sports, and of course, our Challenged Athletes Foundation. Our next guest is on a major role. He's won Ironman 70.3 Boulder, 70.3 Gulf Coast, 70.3 St. George. He's got his own YouTube channel. He's got his own line of clothing out from Zoot. He is the yo guy, the big unit. Mr. Sam Long joins us. How you doing, Sam the man?
I'm doing so great. It's really, really great to connect. It's been a while.
It's been a while, but you've had a lot of stuff going on, bud. And so I think the last time we had a conversation, it was like long before the season started, it was, I don't even know if I'll do an Ironman branded event this year. I think, I'm going to be doing a bunch of other stuff. I don't know what I'm going to be doing. And you've been on a huge Ironman roll, 70.3 Boulder, Gold Coast, St. George, followed by, before that was Oceanside. So you've been doing a lot of racing, but really, really successful. What do you think's been the big key for you?
Yeah, totally. So I think if you look at last year, right, I kind of wanted to have adventure and explore last year. And so I was doing a lot of challenge races, which were fantastic, but I was also traveling all around the world and living out of a suitcase. And that kind of brought a lot of challenges with it, as far as having to just adapt and evolve and be in new places. And those came with a cost and performance. So then this year, when I really wanted to do the season, and I'm like, okay, I got a baby coming, I've got all this stuff going on, like I want to be at my best and I want to make sure I'm at my best. And I was like, the best way to do that is to minimize travel and kind of do the home races, the races I know. And of course, that's in the United States, that's Ironman branded races, and they've put on some great races. And I set it up so that like I've really done not that much travel, so I've been able to just actually train pretty well through most of these races, with the goal of building to the world championship in the PTO majors here coming up.
So watching Oceanside, you were in a position where there's Leo Berger, and I can be conservative, stay here, get on a podium, or I can go for the win. You go for the win, you end up falling back to seventh place, but you don't really know what you have unless you go for it, right? And that's sort of been your style. When you look back at it afterwards, how do you analyze it?
Yeah, I think in the moment, right? And that was actually when I last saw you, right, at the surf clinic the next day. Remember, I showed up for the CAF Adaptive Surf Clinic, and you were like, "Hey, Sam, come on, get on the surfboard." And I think I was honestly pretty down in the dumps that morning. Like I was going on a walk because I was depressed, and I'm like, "Oh man, I've had a horrible race." And something about getting in the cold salt water and surfing, and then like that sort of helped me shift my mindset. Like I view Oceanside like it was really just a rust buster. And I agree completely. I think you should always, at least for me personally, I'd prefer to go for it and then fall short. At the end of the day, nobody even remembers if you're second and seventh is really the same. People remember if you win races. And so I try to go for the win, and and sometimes fall short, but that's okay.
That's always okay. And one of the reasons, obviously, you're staying close to home is you're going to be a daddy soon. What's the due date?
Yeah, so the due date's August 2nd. So we're coming up actually 3 weeks in 3 weeks, basically, is when we're looking at the baby. No, 2 weeks. We're looking at 2 weeks and 2 days. But honestly, it could happen anytime. And we've already got like at night, sometimes my partner, Laura, she's like, "Oh, I think I just had a little contraction." Of course, I'm like up out of bed, like going a million miles an hour. And there's been the last month has been really crazy. We've been kind of looking for homes to try and buy a home as well to get in a more permanent place, and training for, the PTO US Open, which is 2 days after the due date, and then Singapore, and then 70.3 Worlds. And so it's just been like, it's been a huge whirlwind. And then of course I started training with Lionel, 3 weeks ago. So it's like, I actually have so many updates I want to like tell the world, but I've just been too busy to even like tell the story. I've been too busy living life to tell the story.
What do you, when you guys always have to go head to head when you're racing, but training with a guy is different, because obviously steel sharpens steel. you guys push each other more so than if you're just training by yourself. What have you gained from just that experience of training with Lionel?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think our first 2 sessions, we also had to learn a little bit, right? Because steel sharpens steel, but also if you try and sharpen each other too much, then there's not going to be any steel left. You know what I mean? And
Yeah, exactly.
I think the first 2 sessions, because we were so used to racing each other and kind of pushing each other to the limit, I think we actually went like a little too hard. Because then I was like, I mean, I was like on my ass for a week basically. I still got all the training done, but it was like train and basically lie in bed and get that done. So then after a week of that, we kind of came back to the table and we were like, okay, like let's be just a little smarter with this. Let's sharpen each other, but let's also make sure that we hold each other like accountable and that we don't, you know, that we hold back that 5%. And then once we've done that, we've now had 2 weeks of like, it's just been more consistent and still nailing great sessions, but without like, you know, you go 5% harder and you have 20% more fatigue. So I think we found the right limit. And it's been amazing. I mean, I've never really honestly trained with someone where we're both pushing each other to that limit. It's really great.
It's fascinating because I flash back to we had Peter Reed and Tim DeBoom back in the late 90s training together. And I remember Tim DeBoom telling me Peter Reed won the 1998 Ironman and Tim was 10th. And Tim was like, I'm constantly pushing that guy in training and he wins and I get 10. What the hell? It sort of changed their whole dynamic because they were pushing each other. But once Peter beat Tim, then they really couldn't train together anymore. They were worried about sharing too much, I think.
Yeah, and I think with us, it was almost the opposite until this year, right? Because Lionel, unless if one of us had a bad race, but like
Right.
when we were both on it, he had always beat me. So I think it was kind of a little like, okay, if I train with him, he's for sure the alpha dog, and I'm kind of the apprentice, which has its place as well. But I think now it's kind of like we can both come to the table and we can both add, and there's just even that more degree of mutual respect. And so it's like we're both looking to learn from each other, I think.
So with St. George, which was a really cool race with yourself, and then we also had Trevor Foley in second and Jackson Laundry third, Lionel fourth, all you guys within 5 minutes of each other. That was a really, really fun race to watch develop. Was for you, because you've had so many great experiences with St. George and having, Lionel being side by side with Lionel 1 year. And what was your takeaway from that particular race?
Yeah, my biggest takeaway with that race is just when you have a dream of something, you just gotta keep showing up, right? You gotta keep showing up and performing and doing your best year after year after year till you get what you want. And St. George has been kind of the race I've always wanted to win for such a long time. It's where I started as an amateur. It's then where I was going early on as a pro. It's where I made my name. Then as a pro, right, with Lionel, it's where I got on my first podium on the world stage, like that. But I had never actually won, so it was finally like, okay, now I can go and win. And it just goes to show, like, what you want in life isn't going to always happen right away, or even after 3 years. It took me like 5 or 6 years to finally get the win there, but I showed up every single year.
Will you be doing any fulls this year, or is the focus going to be 70.3 and PTO?
Yeah, so I mean, I tried to do Coeur d'Alene.
Right.
Unfortunately, I got 3 flat tires there, and so now I'm kind of I'm not sure. Like,
Yeah.
unfortunately, that was the time in the schedule where it made the most sense. Like, I was able to carve out a bit of time to focus on Ironman training, and it made sense there. And then because I really just want to see what can I do at the full. Where am I at with that?
Right.
And now I sort of have to reevaluate. I'm gonna see how things are with the baby, just how overwhelmed I am, or if I'm like, okay, I got my hand on this. I think I can also tackle Ironman training, but it'd be great to try and do one and knock out that Kona qualification early. But at the same time, like, I also really want to enjoy the time of being a dad. So at this point, I don't know.
Yeah, well, and the other side of that is Lionel sort of made that clear that hey, he's not focusing on Ironman right now. So the fact that both of you are focusing on the shorter distance together, that would be even more helpful.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think you can see me and him doing that, but I think you can also just look at the sport as a whole. I think the full distance really used to be like 90% of how a career was decided. And now I think you can for sure have a great career even if you don't do Ironman, with all the PTO majors coming in and 70.3 worlds gaining more steam. And like the middle distance is really such a great distance right now.
Absolutely. And so with Milwaukee, I was looking at the start list on that. And you're talking Christian and Jan and Magnus and Ben and Daniel Bakkegaard. I mean, you like it when the big boys are there. I'm guessing that this is a lot of fun for both you and Lionel, knowing that the best people in the world are going to be on the start line in Milwaukee.
Oh yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think we live all year, we train all year to get ready for these races and to hope to be at our best. And so, I mean, I really have my fingers crossed that I'm at that race. I mean, I'm doing absolutely everything in my ability to be there. And if the baby doesn't come, like, it's going to be really hard to miss that. But at the same time, it's the right choice. But I will get another option 2 weeks later, and then I will get another option 1 week after that at 70.3 World. So I got three World Championship fields coming up here. And yeah, I really do think that's literally why we be an athlete all year, right? Like the other races are great and everything, but ultimately they're preparation. And I think, like, I do think we can learn something from team sports, right? Like, because at the same time, some people say, oh, you should only ever do championship races. Well, that's also not true, right? Like, you don't want to have to face Patrick Mahomes every single weekend for 16 weeks. Like, it's gonna kill you. You know what I mean? Like, instead, you want to minimize travel, you want to prepare, you want to train, you want to build that confidence, and then you want to really get ready for those few days that matter a year.
So when I look at what's been happening with right now with the World Cups, not the World Cup scene, but the ITU racing and Super League, are you a fan as well when you're all these even races that you're not going to do a Super League race anytime soon, but do you watch that? Do you like all the different formats of triathlon you see out there right now?
Yeah. I mean, I would say there's maybe more likelihood I try and do a Super League race than an Ironman this year. Malibu looks pretty enticing.
You'd be great at Malibu.
Yeah, I honestly would love to come and do Super League Malibu just for the experience. So I'm a fan of the sport from super sprint to Ironman, and like, I think the beauty of it is even trying to do and see how you stack up at multiple distances. And of course, I'm following all of it. And like, don't get me wrong, I know I am nowhere close to any of those guys, but I just think it would be an exhilarating experience to go and see what it's like. And also, what's the crowds like? What's the venue like? How do they set it up? Just like, I watch it on TV, but it'd be cool to see, like, okay, this is what it's actually like in person. And, oh, I'm a pretty good athlete and I'm 20 minutes behind them or something,
Well, we saw Cam Worth at Malibu and he got lapped out, right? It's like, okay.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, it just goes to show, like, there's about triathlon's one sport, but it's actually about 5 different sports, right? And
Totally.
and someone who's really good at one might not be good at another branch of it.
So when you were kind enough to join us in Oceanside, we had our luncheon and we honored Mike Riley there. And you and I had a little conversation with the crowd and talking about, you had come to our San Diego Triathlon Challenge a couple of years ago and hung out with all of our challenge athletes, which was awesome. Came to the surf clinic. But that day when I was interviewing you, you said something that you related to the athletes because growing up, you faced some challenges yourself. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I guess I don't talk about this too much, but like, I remember I was kind of put in the box, right, of I'm different and in not such a good way. I was put in special ed when I was in like first grade, second grade. I couldn't say my S's and I couldn't say my R's and I couldn't say my L's. Well, guess what? My name is Sam Long. It's got an S and it's got an L. So I couldn't even say my own name, And at first I thought, oh, there's nothing wrong with it. But I remember kind of like being shunned and oh, Sam, you got to go to your special ed kind of. And it was like,
interesting.
As a kid, you don't realize, you just think, oh, I'm on my normal learning curve. I'm learning. I'm happy. I'm having a great time as I'm understanding the world. But then you catch on to these adults saying like, oh, you're different and you're not as good and you don't belong with everyone else. And I was realizing like, okay, I think obviously it's way different, but the adaptive sports, it's the same way. Oh, you don't belong in sports. You don't have a leg, or you can't do this, so on and so forth. And all they want to do is be like everyone else. And they showcase that they can be like everyone else, right? The spirit of sport and the spirit of competition is the same thing, regardless of what your God-given talents and abilities are, and maybe even better if you've seen misfortune in your life, right? That's taken you down. I honestly think it's probably even better. It showcases like the ideals and the virtues of sports even more. And so I think that's why I've always really, really identified with it,
When was sport a huge catalyst for you getting past that feeling that you were lesser than?
Well, I think so. So that's the thing, right? Because sport was what I was always good at, right? So
Right.
there were the things I was bad at, but like I could pick up pretty much any sport because I was good at moving with my body. And so I think for me, sport was a way to be like, okay, I do belong and I am actually like good at something, and you don't need to put me in this box. And so like sport was literally my saving grace, you could say, even from third grade.
So you've created your own YouTube channel, which comes with its own challenges, right? Because all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, I better come out with an episode. I gotta do stuff there. That's back in the day, an athlete could just be an athlete. I mean, Dave Scott, Mark Allen, everything was based on the results, and that was basically it. But now as an athlete, you have to be an athlete. Now you have to be a content creator, social media person, a little bit of your own agent, and to a certain degree, self-coaching. There's a lot involved in, and then obviously you're gonna be a dad soon too. There's a lot of things pulling at you.
Yeah, totally. I mean, there's definitely, like, I don't know. I think it's maybe never been harder to be a professional triathlete in a way, right? Because of all the different things that mean to be success. And ultimately,
Right.
like, I think if you ask any pro, including myself, like what's the most important thing, or why are we a professional? Well, I'm a professional because I want to see how fast I can go, right? That's what interests me. But I'm also a professional, or I'm a professional because I want to make money and now I want to provide for my family. And so it's like you can't really have one without the other, unless if you have a trust fund or something, right?
Right.
And so it's like, okay, I need to do all the things to make sure I pay the bills so that I can then make sure I'm able to train and go as fast as I possibly can and have a long-term viable career. And it's actually quite fun, like taking over the YouTube. On one hand, it's been really difficult, but on another hand, like it's taught me a lot about storytelling and how to tell a story. And also think about like, because I think it was interesting, right? I had 3 or 4 different people doing my YouTube before that, and I think all of them had a different idea of, oh, this is who Sam Long is, and this is how I want to portray Sam Long. And some of them portrayed me as an asshole, as this like cocky, arrogant asshole. And then other people wanted to portray me as like, almost went the opposite direction. Oh, let's portray him as like this really nice guy. And so it was like the branding was kind of inconsistent, and people saw that, and it created this whole thing of like, oh, Sam's a way different person in real life than he is in like social media. But now that I'm doing it myself, it's like, okay, I just like, I know I'm more consistent. So I think overall it definitely has its pros. The hardest part is like figuring out how to film yourself, right? Like that's complicated.
And coaching wise, are you coaching yourself right now?
Yeah, so I'm coaching myself as well. Honestly, it's been a fantastic decision for me as an individual. I don't think like there's one way or the highway. I don't think there's one way to do it. I think some people really need a coach. I think other people maybe don't. And it started just as like a trial process to see, okay, let's see how this goes. And right now it's going really, really well. It could change, but for now it's going really, really well. And I'm open to what the future holds. But like, I think just listening to my body and really paying attention to that and having the flexibility, especially this year with so much going on and the baby coming, like I write a schedule out every week or 2 weeks in advance, but I also know that it can change quite a bit. And so, yeah, I don't know. It's just been going really well.
You know your body better than anybody. You've been doing it for a long time, and you know you can always reach out to people. Say, I'm having a little issue with nutrition, or I'm having an issue with this or that. You have enough resources in the community where you can just reach out to somebody and get some insight.
Yeah, exactly. Which I do all the time. I get insight all the time. And I also think, like, especially as a professional, it's different if you're an age grouper and you're working a job because your hours are so limited anyways. But as a professional, like we have I had the opportunity to train with Lionel the last 2 years. We never trained together, right? He had a different coach. I had a different coach. it's like, oh, I've got my session, he's got his session, like, and it actually creates these barriers to train with other people. And then
Right.
I found, like, now that I'm coaching myself, even when I went to Boulder, it's like, oh, I'm jumping in with all different people.
Yes.
And I hear what their session, and it's not like, oh, it's not just like this random chaos. It's like, I still ask them, okay, what's your session? Like, I know, okay, this session is going to accomplish this. And then I modify and I build the week around it. And that way, like, I'm just a social guy. Like, for me, training on my own 365 days a year, like, I'm going to get worse. Even if the training is the most scientific, best thing ever, for me, training with others and having fun is the most important part. And so I'm able to accomplish that by
It has to be really empowering to sort of control your own destiny and get up, you decide over the weekend, okay, this is what I'm going to do this week. And you come up with your plan. And then at the end of the week, you're able to go, look at that. 85, 90% of that stuff I actually did and didn't end up injured. And I'm happy. And I train with other people.
Exactly. And then,
the
like,
best.
Especially when you go to a race and it's like, okay, you've been making those decisions and, you're always having this, I'm always having this conversation with myself. Like, am I doing too much? Is this putting me over the edge? Like, so on and so forth. And then you show up at a race and it's like, okay, like, I was in charge of the plan and I was in charge of executing the training. And if I fail and I flop on my face, this is like, it's pretty much 100% on me. Like, I really messed it up, but then you win and it's like, oh, wow, I made all the right decisions in the training block as well as doing the hard work, and it's just such a rewarding feeling then.
So Trevor Foley's been training with you guys as well. Is some of your thoughts on Trevor? Because this is a kid on the move.
Yeah, he's a great guy. He is a great kid. Great kid. I mean, yeah, he's really, really fun. Huge talent, a lot of fun to be around. And I think he's got a really bright future. It's just great to have, like, with the three of us, Lionel, me, Trevor, like, we've got three different personalities.
Totally different.
Three totally different personalities. And I mean, it's just like, it's actually quite hilarious because, like, our biggest debates are always like, okay, what time are we going to start the session, And mind you, we're in Tucson right now.
Where it's 1,000 degrees.
It's 1,000 degrees. So by 9 in the morning, it's over 90 degrees. So I'm the one who's always opting like, hey, let's start at 6. Let's start at 6. And Lionel's, who historically used to wake up at like 10. So to his credit, he's really trying, but he's always like, 6 is too early. Let's start at 7. And so then we always have a debate. And Trevor is just kind of like Mr. Easygoing. He's just like, I'll be there whenever. But then, like, we show up, whatever time we decide, we show up and, Lionel's like, oh man, I had to get up so early to get here. I'm like, I'm always up at this time anyway, so I don't really care. And then Trevor's like, because he's 24, he's like, yeah, I stayed up till 11:30 last night and woke up 10 minutes before, like, and his eyes are still shut. Yeah, I just woke up and no time to make coffee, no time for anything, but here I am. It's just like,
that's great.
And that's like every day we've got that going on.
Besides the fact that he likes to start late, what else have you learned from, being, when you're running or riding with somebody, you learn a lot about that athlete, what makes them tick. What have you learned about Lionel?
I mean, to be honest, I did this track session with Lionel yesterday. Like, obviously this is what everyone says, but like, I was honestly like I was impressed and intimidated at the same time. Like, I think he was struggling a little bit with the paces, and I've never seen anyone like motivate themselves so hard internally just like to get a training session done. I've seen people do it in races, but like, it was really impressive and cool to see, like, he lives and he dies for that, not just in racing, but also in training. Like, it was really cool. It was really impressive to see, honestly.
What's interesting is one thing that is, when I have watched Lionel and seeing him, nobody tunes into his YouTube channel to watch him go, I'm going to go for an easy 5K today, right? You're there to watch a sufferfest. You're watching him there to hurt. And I've always wondered what the long term of that is. I mean, you can only go to the well so many times in training and in racing, but this guy is an anomaly. I mean, he can dig so deep, and he seems like he can do it every single day.
Yeah, honestly, that's what it seems like. And talking with him, it seems like, right, the last year he went down this rabbit hole of like, oh, I'm not going to burn those matches and I'm not going to go deep. And I only get so many of them. And he'd say himself, he's had his worst performances he's had in a while. And I think he's back to like, I'm going to just go as hard as I can every single hard. There's still easy days in the week, but the hard days of the week, it's like go as hard as you can and get it done. And it's going to be exciting to see what comes out of that.
So for you, you've accomplished a lot in a career that's is still just getting going. What do you look at as these are things I need to accomplish or I want to accomplish in my career?
Yeah, so like to be honest, I'm actually going through a bit of a phase of like having to recreate that. Like that's a work in progress for me now. And I think it's because of what's happened with Kona, right? Like I think
Right.
for years it was always like, okay, Kona's going to be like the main object. Like Kona was what I dreamed about. And now it's like, you know, I qualified for Kona back in 2019 and I still haven't gone to it. Like, and some of that's my own fault, right? I decided not to go last year to focus on 70.3 worlds, but with the understanding that it would happen this year, and then it doesn't happen this year, and now it's moved to every other year. And it's like if you want to make your Kona the be all end all, like you're only getting it every 2 years now, and we don't even know what's going to happen after 2026. It might be gone, and so
right.
And you know, I also started the sport and full distance was also the thing I cared about. Like I couldn't have cared less about 70.3. I didn't care one tiny little fraction about it. Like it was Ironman was the only thing I cared about. And now like I'm just seeing I don't know if the sport's seeing an identity crisis, although I think it is a little bit in terms of Kona and what's important, but like certainly as myself, I'm seeing like an identity crisis in terms of like what's my dream in the sport and what am I really trying to accomplish? And so like for right now, I'm just trying to be the best triathlete I can and race really cool races. But like, I have to figure out like, what is that, you know, that career long.
Yeah.
And of course it's okay. I still want to win Kona once, but it's like, hopefully I don't want to talk too big, but it's like, hopefully I can have a bigger dream than that. And, but I don't know what that is anymore at this point.
Well, it's interesting too, because we don't know tomorrow, somebody might come out with something new. with
exactly.
$1 billion prize purse, and who knows, right? PTO came out of nowhere, and all of a sudden those races, those last few years have really the US Open and Canadian Open last year were huge. Those were really big races because you can make what used to be winning money by finishing top 10. And changed the whole sense of it. I looked at when I saw people finished, you know, 3rd and 5th in Canadian Open, US Open. That's like a world championship season because that was big dollars against a great field.
Yeah, I mean, a day that really truly changed my life was 2020 Daytona, right? When PTO put $1 million, and of course at one race I was leading the race in second, and then I blew up, but I got 9th place, but I got a paycheck for $18,000, and I was like 22 years old, like. I had made a deal with my dad of like, okay, hey, if I'm not able to make money in this sport, like, and that was the cutoff. If I must have been a little older. I must have been, because I'm 27. I must have been 24, but I was about to turn 25. The deal was if I wasn't making money by the time I was 25, I was going and I was getting a real job, you know? And so, you know, I get 9th place and, you know, $18,000. And I'm basically like, hey, Dad, here's my paycheck for 18 grand, you know, like I can make money in this. And that's why I think like, yeah, the sport's changing. I guess ultimately I just want to focus on being the best athlete I can and being versatile at whatever distance like comes out on top as being the most dominant or promising distance, you know?
So Dad, I got 18K. I can move out of the basement.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Because that must have been when you first had that discussion of, hey, I want to see if I can become a professional athlete. How'd that discussion go when you talked to your dad and said, hey, I want to give this a go?
Yeah. So I think like I was in college, you know, and it was always my family. It was always, okay, Sam, you're going to college and, you know, you're getting some type of a job that comes out of that kind of thing. Right. But it was obvious my passion like was in sports. So I was thinking, okay, maybe I'll be like a personal trainer or a physical therapist. Right. And I was racing triathlon. I actually turned professional in college, but there's a huge difference between racing with a pro card and like being a professional. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And it was kind of like, then I graduated and I was like, okay, I think I'm gonna like give this a job for, like, my dad gave me like $5,000 as a graduation present. Like, okay, like this is to get you on your feet. You got to do whatever you want. And I was like, cool, I'm taking this and I'm going to Australia. That's what I did. I said, I'm going to Australia. I've got an Airbnb for $17 a night there that I can be there. And like, I'm just gonna train and like rough it and be on my own. And you know, they were all for the idea, but it was like, okay, this is like, you're young. It's great to pursue your dreams, but like, let's also be stuck in reality. You can pursue this a bit. And again, you turn 25 and this ain't working, it's done. That
Right.
so that was the deal. And then of course it worked out.
I mean, when you look back, when we were interviewing you for at Tri Club, that was just a couple of years ago. I think it was right after we San Diego Triathlon Challenge 2022, 2021, 2021. And we were talking about you living in your parents' basement, and it wasn't that long since you had moved out of there. When you look back at that's just a couple of years ago to where you're at now, sometimes you go, I can't believe this has happened so quickly.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like, it's been, you know, I feel like I'm on the accelerated track, which is a good thing. But I will also say, like, in my life is so much better in so many ways, but and I'm sure you agree with this because I think you did it, but like back in the 70s and the 80s, you know, like when you're living out of the truck and you're, you know, making $1,500 at a race is like winning the lottery, man. Like,
Totally.
it's pretty hard to like, those highs are like, and you win a race for the first time and you get on a podium for the first time, like, and you've really got no worries in life other than like, hey,
None.
where am I parking the truck for the night to sleep? Like I look back on those years with, like, don't get me wrong, there was hardship, but just such great fondness because I was just like on the seat of my pants, figuring things
Right.
out and having no idea if it was going to work, you know?
There was no risk.
No
I,
risk. Yeah,
I,
exactly.
yeah. So when we a magazine I was working for went out of business, and I was sleeping on friends' floors when somebody gave us a check for $17,000 that said, "Go start your own magazine," and it started Competitor Magazine. But you know, we were basically sleeping at people's houses trying to figure out if, gosh, am I ever going to make a living doing this? But again, like you said, it's not like you got up in the morning, you were disappointed, or you're like, this is great. I'm going and talking to athletes, and we're going to start produce a magazine, and we can actually afford to do it. You look back at those days because there was no risk. No, I could lose this or could lose. You have nothing to lose.
Yeah,
You're playing with
exactly.
house money.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, totally. Yeah, and that's actually something I try and tell myself a lot to get me back in that mindset. Is I say, like, every time I race, I am playing with house money. You know, I'm living my dream. Like, I'm literally living my dream came true. So it's like, you know, you get up there and you got a following now, and you got sponsors, and you got pressure, and it's like sometimes you get away from it, and then it's like, wait a minute, like, I'm all right. Like, if you had told me 2 years ago, oh, you'd have like all of this stuff and sponsorships and prestige and race wins and so on and so forth, I'd be like, that's it, life's made. But then you forget it once it's happened, you know?
Yes. I remember interviewing Craig Alexander once in Kona and talking about the pressure. He's defending champion and coming back. He says, but that's why I do this. If nobody wanted to talk to me, well, how am I helping sponsors? How am I successful? The fact that I'm successful and people want to talk to me and I have to schedule interviews, that's not a hardship. That's a good
Exactly.
thing.
Exactly. That's a sign of making it. Like, exactly. And so I always just tell myself that so that I remember, like, wait, these are, you know, when it's hard and you got long work days and you got, yeah, 8 interviews before the race. And it's like, oh, I wish I was just sleeping in the back of my truck so I could race. It's like, well, wait a minute. The reason you were sleeping in the back of your truck is so that you can do these interviews now, you know? And it just brings me back and realize, like, I'm so grateful for the life I get to lead. I'm so grateful for the sponsors that support me. I'm so grateful for all the fans that, you know, are really interested in my journey, and that, you know, I make them smile or I make them laugh or I inspire them to
Yep.
put on a pair of running shoes and get out there. And it's like, really, things couldn't be better in life, you know?
Well, and the journey is something I always tell people the reason that age group athletes relate to yourself and Lionel and Trevor and all the rest. You guys were age group athletes. This was your passion, and then you found out you had an innate ability to go fast and to push big power. But you didn't know that when you started. So when you're doing a show like this or doing your own YouTube channel and people are seeing it, they can relate. They can't go and play the Masters. They can't go and play Wimbledon, but they
Yeah.
can be on the same course with you at St. George or any of these races at the same day, same conditions, and you guys can talk story after the races. There's nothing cooler than that.
Exactly. And sometimes, you know, like Ironman Arizona, right? It's a multi-loop course. I'm having a bad race. You know, I'm literally running with the age groupers. They're on their first lap. I'm on my second lap. Some of them are running faster than me. Like, you know, it brings you back to earth pretty damn fast, but in a great way.
I love it. Sam, it's always such a treat to get to chat with you. Hopefully it works out. October 22nd is San Diego Triathlon Challenge 30th anniversary. I know you got, you know, you'll be racing a lot of different stuff. I'm not sure if that date will work, but if it does, we obviously would love to have you back here. Our athletes loved hanging out with you that weekend. And, you know, you connected with our athletes in a way a lot of people haven't before.
Yeah, it'd be great to try and make it. So, well, no promises, but we'll see. It would be really, really great to try and make it.
Love it. And we'd love to see the baby at that point.
Yeah, exactly.
Road trip.
A road trip. Yeah.
Love it. Sam, thank you, buddy, for taking so much time. Always a treat. And if I don't talk to you beforehand, congrats on becoming a daddy.
Yeah, thank you so much, Bob.
Sam Long has been our guest, everybody. Again, Breakfast with Bob, our not quite Kona edition. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We'll catch you next time. See ya.
Cheers.
Cheers.